Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Tonight is the 10th of September, and Rebellion is live in New Mexico after this weekend's antics from our governor starting Friday, where she banned the open carry or the carry of firearms in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. There's been a series of protests and a series of lawsuits filed already on behalf of New Mexico gun owners. So, what is new and different? What is developed in this story? So, I have a friend who listens to my podcast, like a lot of my friends do, and he was talking about suing the government. New Mexico government is basically taking tax money away from him. Yes, that's true. However, with what has happened with our governor, is she has removed immunity from law enforcement, but in doing so, she's also stripped herself of law enforcement. One of the cases that was filed was from National Firearms Policy Coalition, and they name the plaintiffs in the case before they even get to the state of New Mexico. So specifically, they name our governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, and her toady. I'm not even going to bother with looking up his name, but they named them both on the complaint that was filed yesterday on behalf of New Mexico gun owners to stay this unjust executive fiat order. More interesting to me, though, is today, if you know anything about Albuquerque and the metro area there, so if you're not from New Mexico and you managed to find New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, thank you, first off. We're available on all audio podcasting platforms, and we're on Rumble at 505 BROU. I don't post up there as much as I try to get the audio podcast out as much as I can, daily, Monday through Thursday. There was a protest in Old Town, New Mexico, Old Town, Albuquerque. Now, why is this important? There were hundreds of people at this protest, some of them openly carrying, some of them carrying rifles, long guns. But in general, it was to say no to the governor. More interesting is that no one went, and it doesn't appear that anybody was arrested from this protest. So there isn't any law enforcement agency that is willing to go in and arrest people en masse to put teeth behind the governor's unjust rule. That's because they know this is unconstitutional. Now, I've let you guys know that I'm a huge fan of Mr. Guns and Gear, Mike from there. He brought up something very interesting, and I would really like to see someone in New Mexico, a law enforcement agent, do exactly what he's advocating for. The governor, in declaring this unjust rule, by fiat, has stepped in the same pool that New Orleans did during Hurricane Katrina. So if you're not familiar with Hurricane Katrina, they tried to strip the 2A rights from citizens in New Orleans after the hurricane hit, and they arrested some folks and they put some folks in jail. Well, it was later found that they had committed a felony, that emergency actions such as a storm or some sort of emergency that they actually have some right to declare does not give them power to get rid of civil rights. And as much as blue people, I say blue people, the people on the left usually, or those that are anti-gun, like to think that they can just declare something an emergency even with having those powers given to them, that doesn't mean that they can restrict civil rights. And as much as they don't like to admit that carrying a gun is covered by the Constitution, and more importantly in this case, the New Mexico Constitution, these are civil rights. So they don't have a choice, okay? It's just as valid as the First Amendment, speaking your mind. But Mr. Guns and Gear had said, because he had shown the evidence and shown the court cases themselves, that this is a felony. So our governor has committed not one, but 2 felonies in issuing this edict. Now, I don't see any law enforcement agency that has the stones to go up and actually arrest our governor. That would make sense, too much sense, and it would be too much in our court. When I say our court, I mean our group, to do that. Now, there's a lot of them that have come out and said that they will not enforce this. They don't agree with this. Bernalillo County's sheriff was more so concerned about the civil instances that would the civil cases that would be raised against individual officers, and that's what we want. We want the fear of the people reinstilled in these people in power. They have a monopoly on violence. We cannot use violence. If we use violence, they win, unfortunately. I've talked about that line in the sand that we've hit. I think we've actually hit it in New Mexico. We're the battleground state that I didn't expect to be a battleground state, because usually the people in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Las Cruces usually dictate what happens in the rest of the state. But this protest gives me hope and shows that there's a potential that we have rebellion in very, very blue stronghold cities. For this to erupt at Old Town, which is in the center of Albuquerque, gives me hope that there's enough people that have had their cage rattled by the governor's unjust edict that it won't stand. I personally don't believe it's going to stand, and I think those cases that are being raised right now, and I'm sure there's some New Mexico attorneys that are going after this hot and heavy also, not just because they're trying to save civil rights, but they can actually see dollar signs just like everyone else. And as much as it sucks to say this, making it financially painful for anyone that's willing to do this is actually one of the most peaceful ways to possibly win. And yes, that does impact taxpayers, but it also affects them in a different way. And what I mean is you get your rights back. Entities like school entities, they have insurance against such cases. And those insurance companies will have to pay out before the actual entity itself. That's up to and including the state itself. Having worked for K-12 schools and having seen what happened with the shooting and the law cases that came out after that, they have paid out not once, not twice, but I believe they're working on their third time paying out. And this was done by the insurance companies. So this is something that isn't great. Yes, their premiums are going to go up. And yes, that means we are going to pay more eventually as tax-paying citizens. But we're already seeing that anyway. And I would rather get my rights back than to worry about such things as suing these guys into oblivion, because that is the only thing that's going to make them back down. We can't go up and hope that someone has the stones to arrest them. I don't see American citizens, nor do I see New Mexican citizens going up and arresting the governor and being able to pull that off. However, if you name her as the primary plaintiff in a case, or primary defendant in a case, she's going to have to pay. And that's what we want. They went after Alex Jones and sued him for basically the GDP of France, okay? We need that same type of thing for any one of these guys that are willing to do something like this, because then it lets them know, not just the person that did it, but everyone else who would think about doing something like this, like the Gavin Newsoms, that this won't stand, that the American people have had enough, and it's time for us to rise up. Now, what are we doing other than that? My friends that I know were going to protest are raising a legal fund for themselves and their protesting friends that are going to do this stuff. I think this was done outside of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't in that crowd somewhere, because they believe, just like I do, that your rights are your rights. And whether you like them or not, it's still your American civil right to do this. To carry a firearm is making sure that you are still going to be alive, that you know that the government can't protect you anymore, and that you're willing to take that next step to protect yourself and those you care about and those you love. In a city like Albuquerque, as crime-ridden as it is, that's why she was able to use that as an emergency. is it comes out that the kids that she was actually talking about were killed by stray fire from gang violence. Okay, in the recording where she was, the press conference, that's what I wanted to say. In the press conference recording, she literally says that she doesn't care about civil rights and that civil rights can be suspended at will. No civil right is above her say-so. And that's not the case. Neither is her power above our say-so. The only reason why the government exists is by the consent and the will of the people. You have exceeded, Governor Grisham, you have exceeded the will of the people, and the people are now coming for you. Expect the fight, because we're going to win, and you know it. That's why you raised a $750,000 fine or fee so that you are a war chest for this. You know that your policies have let criminals back on the street, and this is a direct blowback situation from your own policies. Your policies have created a revolving door for the justice system in New Mexico. And law enforcement, while even in your own home cities, is even backing away from you. The rest of law enforcement in New Mexico knows that your policies are what is the problem. You allowing law enforcement agencies to arrest someone just to have them returned to the street within the day is what has caused the problems in New Mexico. It's time that the American people and New Mexicans stand up, and we are. I don't believe, after seeing the protest that it came out today, that they would comply with you as much as you think they would. What you're seeing, that protest in Old Town, New Mexico, is just the tip of the iceberg, because there's 101 other people, thousands of people, that couldn't make such a protest in Albuquerque because we don't live in Albuquerque. We live in the surrounding areas. And it would take some of us hours to get to a protest like this. And we also know that we have the backing of our sheriffs in those rural areas and our law enforcement agencies in those rural areas that will not back you. If you declare this at the state level ever, expect the protest and the pushback to be tenfold. And they're simply put, by your own admission during your press conference, you cannot arrest us all. We outnumber you. It's time for you to realize that. Now, as far as impeaching our governor, this has been in the blogosphere and social media where everybody's calling for impeaching our governor. I see another chance that we could possibly do this, because this should put enough pressure on the Speaker of the Roundhouse that would actually have to do something. And now's the time to act. We have tried this in the past, but we didn't have the support of those people in the Roundhouse that we need to do this. If there is an impeachment, we have to first get, I believe it's 250,000 signatures. So 250,000 signatures, something like that, to start the proceedings. Be ready to sign the petition. I've already seen the digital ones go around, but those usually don't have any clout. We need actually signed petitions. So I expect them in the newest gun shows, people pushing those around. I expect people like Rod Montoya, who's the representative for Northwest New Mexico, and he's been out pushing petitions before to overturn some of the governor's unjust edicts and unjust laws that she's trying to push. I expect every one of those politicians to come hunting for, because blood's in the water, the sharks know what's coming, and they're going after you. Like, share, subscribe, comment, be great.